Today, we're going to dig into a really interesting puzzle, something that gets right to the heart of how we build things. It's all about why some teams just click and create amazing stuff, while others, even with way more resources, just seem to fall flat. And the answer, you'll see, isn't about talent. It's about structure. I mean, you've seen this, right? A tiny startup, maybe 10 people, fueled by coffee and a dream, launches a product that runs circles around some massive corporation with 15,000 employees. You have to ask yourself, how does that even happen? Where does all that scale and power and money just disappear?
Well, the answer is wrapped up in an idea with a name that, let's be honest, sounds pretty controversial: benevolent dictatorship. But hang in there with me, because this has way less to do with politics and a whole lot more to do with what makes incredible products actually work.
So, what do we really mean by this? This isn't just about having a boss who's got a big personality or a strong vision. No, it's a very specific and, as it turns out, a surprisingly powerful way to lead.
Okay, let's break it down. In this model, a leader's authority doesn't come from their title on an org chart. It comes from the fact that they are genuinely good at what they do and people trust their judgment. And here's the most important part. Their #1 goal isn't just to hit next quarter's revenue target, it's to protect the long-term health and quality of the thing they're building.
So this model really boils down to 4 key things. 1, they have the final say. No decision by committee. 2, they are obsessed with long-term quality over those quick short-term wins. 3, they're protected, somehow, from the constant pressure to just boost the numbers this quarter, even if it hurts the product later. And finally, and this is crucial, people listen to them because they're competent, not just because they're the boss.
All right, so why does this actually work so well? Especially when you're building something complex, like software. It really all comes down to a single powerful concept: coherence.
This quote right here just nails it. Coherence is that feeling that a product makes sense, that it has a clear, singular vision. But that vision is so fragile. And when you try to make every decision by committee, by consensus, you shatter it. You end up with a camel, a horse designed by a committee, right? The opposite of coherence is the feature-bloated mess we've all had to use.
And this chart really lays bare the central conflict. On one side, you have the benevolent dictator, who's optimizing for things like correctness, simplicity, and making sure the product is actually maintainable in the future. But on the other side, you have the market, which is screaming for growth, engagement, and revenue right now. This leadership model acts as a shield, protecting that long-term vision from the immediate demands of the market.
But that word, benevolent, is doing some heavy lifting here because motive changes everything. When you have a leader who truly cares about the craft and the long-term quality, you get products with integrity. But when you have that same authority without the benevolence, that's when you get extractive platforms, dark patterns, and systems designed to lock you in forever.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds great, but it seems to rely on finding some once-in-a-generation genius like a Steve Jobs or a Linus Torvalds, right? That doesn't really scale, does it? What are the rest of us supposed to do?
And that question right there leads us to the real takeaway. The goal isn't to find one all-powerful dictator, it's about taking the principles of this model and spreading them throughout the entire organization. See, the solution isn't one genius. Is scaling the principle itself. You find competent people and you empower them to be the dictator of their own specific area. You don't just give them tasks to do, you give them real ownership and the authority to make the final call in their domain.
Now, of course, for this to not be total chaos, you need some rules of the road. You need crystal clear domains of ownership so there's no fighting over who owns what. You need hard interfaces, think APIs or service level agreements, that act as contracts between these domains. You also need to know the difference between a two-way door decision that's easy to reverse and a one-way door decision that's almost impossible to take back. And finally, you have to build a culture of fast correction, where mistakes are just learning opportunities, not a reason to point fingers.
And this whole idea of structuring your teams around ownership isn't just some nice management theory. It's actually a reflection of an iron law of how we build things. It's called Conway's law, and you have to understand this isn't a suggestion. It's like a law of physics for organizations. It basically says that the software you build will inevitably become a mirror image of how your teams talk to each other.
Let me put that in another way, even more bluntly. Your org chart is your architecture. It's not a metaphor, it's a literal truth. So if your product's architecture is a mess, don't look at the code first. Look at the org chart. If you want to fix the architecture, you have to fix the organization first.
And you can see this idea in action in modern frameworks like team topologies. It's a popular way to set up engineering teams where each team type is basically its own little distributed dictatorship. A platform team, for example, acts as a benevolent dictator of the constraints and tools everyone else uses. A stream-aligned team gets to be the dictator of a specific business outcome. It all lines up perfectly.
So here's a quick test for your own organization. Ask yourself, who has the power to change a system? Who has the power to block a bad change? And who gets blamed when it all goes wrong? In a lot of companies, the answer is 3 different people. And when authority, responsibility, and accountability are split apart like that, you get total gridlock.
Okay, so with all that in mind, let's circle back to our original question and figure out why those huge companies get so hopelessly stuck.
Let's think about that number again. 15,000 people. That is a staggering amount of human potential and brainpower. The problem is never the people, it's the structure. It's the tangled web of communication lines that connects all of them.
And that structure creates 2 totally different universes. In that little startup, reality hits the decision makers instantly. The feedback loop is tiny. But in the giant company, the truth about what's actually happening on the ground gets filtered, delayed, and sanitized on its long journey up the chain of command. Authority is fragmented, and making any real change becomes a huge political risk.
And this failure of structure is exactly how Agile, a movement that was all about empowerment, got completely twisted. It started with developers simply asking for autonomy and faster feedback. But management heard unpredictable and got scared of losing control. So they decided to scale Agile by piling on ceremonies and frameworks, which completely buried the original point under a mountain of process.
This quote just sums it up so perfectly. The whole point of Agile was for developers to say, hey, we can't predict the future in complex work, and then something like the Scaled Agile Framework, or SAFe, comes along as management's attempt to say, oh yes we can, we'll just schedule all the uncertainty away, which of course is impossible.
And that leaves us with the one question that really gets to the bottom of everything. Uncertainty is a given. It's going to happen. You can't plan it away. So the only thing you can control is who is allowed to respond to it. Is it the competent people who are closest to the problem, or is that power held by a committee far removed from reality? The answer to that question defines everything. It's not just your org chart, it's your architecture. And ultimately, it's your destiny.